this computer. Okay, so without further ado, I will crack on. You may well be familiar with this first slide. It's been in the Highway Code for years. It's Rule 163, which says give vulnerable road users, fancy term for people it's easy to hurt, people walking, cycling, riding horses, at least as much space as you would a car. Now that's a bit ambiguous because a lot of people will overtake another car and give them 25 mil, which is why everybody folds their wing mirrors in. So the Department for Transport put this photograph in the Highway Code to make the point that what they meant was, imagine there's a car there and overtake the imaginary car, crossing over the centre line using the other side of the road. So if there's oncoming traffic, we can't overtake and we need to wait. Now the Highway Code was updated about 2 years ago now, and the latest version put a bit more detail into this gap. It says if the vulnerable road user is a pedestrian, that gap should be 2 metres. If it's somebody on a horse, that gap should be 2 metres and the passing vehicle should be going 10 miles an hour or less. And if it's somebody riding a bike, that gap should be at least 1.5 metres, and if the vehicle's travelling faster than 30 miles an hour, then it should be even more. But the bottom line is, it's cross over the centre line, use the other side of the road, and if there's oncoming traffic, we need to wait. If we look at where the Department for Transport put the rider in this situation, I guess they're about 1 metre out from the curb. That keeps you away from the drains, it keeps you away from the broken glass in urban areas, it keeps you away from the thorns in rural areas. I'm just going to let that. Admitting people. Sorry if I've been missing you out. It keeps you away from pedestrians who step out in the road without looking. So a metre gap is what we teach when we're doing cycle training with children. The absolute minimum would be 0.5 metre. Don't get any closer than that. Now, if we think about a group and we've got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 riders, one behind the other, then that passing vehicle is going to be on the other side of the road for a long time, which is why it's perfectly legal for people to ride side by side. And again, the update to the latest version of the Highway Code made that a lot clearer. The old version of the Highway Code said don't ride more than 2 abreast, so 2 was always fine. This latest one says riding side by side is perfectly legal and safer for everybody in many circumstances. And the most obvious one is that instead of having a row of 8, 9, 10 riders, they're now 2 by 2, so it's only 4 or 5 riders wide. And Police Scotland have been using this social media post to make that point to the public: 2 abreast, perfectly legal, safer for everybody, and explaining why, because you're borrowing the other side of the road for half the amount of time, so it's easier to overtake the group. That's a really useful image to have in your back pocket if you're out leading rides. But let's imagine now that there is lots of oncoming traffic, so even if you've got a solo rider, you can end up with a queue. So what does the Highway Code say here? Well, what it says is if you're in a slow-moving vehicle and there's a long queue of traffic. Now, it doesn't say whether long is number of vehicles or amount of time. That's a judgment call you need to make. But if you're slow and there's a long queue of traffic, when it's safe, pull over and allow the traffic to go by. Now, that's not immediately somebody comes up behind you. We're talking about a long queue of traffic. As a single rider, it's usually fairly easy to find somewhere you could pull over to allow a queue to go by. But if you're in a group of 13, 14, 15 riders, you're really talking about a lay-by or a bus stop or something like that you pull over and get the group out of the road for the traffic to go by. So, as an example, I've led rides that are coming from Dollar back towards Stirling on the Hillfoots Road. As you leave Dollar, you go into the twisty, windy bit with double white lines. The group's going downhill. It might be going a pretty decent pace. There is nowhere safe to pull over until you get to the golf driving range just before you go into Tillicoultry. There is a lay-by, but I pulled a group into there once, and you can get in, but you can't get out again. So sometimes it's a matter of just getting your group tight, chain ganging it, and getting to a place where it's safe to pull over. You pull in, let the traffic go by, wave thanks, and then get your breath back, check it's clear, and carry on. So it's not there's a car behind us, we've got to get out of the way. It's when there's a long queue and when it's safe, and it's the riders who decide when it is safe. Does that all make sense? Good. And again, this is Police Scotland Roads team, so it's a pretty useful reference to show people if they're disputing the fact that riding two abreast is okay. Now I've got a wee video I'm going to share with you. I've not managed to embed this one, so I'm going to have to change the screen I'm sharing with, so bear with me. Also, trigger warning, this video, nobody's killed, but cyclists are hit, and I think some of them had to have a reconstructive surgery. So if you don't want to watch this one, just close your eyes and look away. New share. Okay, I'm hoping you can all see a screen that says, moment a car ploughs into cyclists in Somerset. Rebecca's nodding, that's great. Here we go. So, you can see the road. It looks, I know, a bit like the A811 perhaps, that sort of size. There's oncoming traffic, and the riders have singled up, giving the impression that it's safe to overtake. There's more oncoming traffic. It's not safe to overtake, but this driver decides to thread the needle between the riders and the oncoming traffic, and it all goes horribly wrong. So think carefully about whether you single up. If it's not safe for somebody to overtake, stay in your 2-up formation, and then it's up to the drivers to overtake when it's safe. The driver in that case was an 81-year-old who was then banned for driving for 2 years. I'm just going back to right. Hopefully I've got the screen sharing sorted, and we're now looking at a traffic island and a bit of the Forth Bridge in the background. Rebecca, give me a thumbs up if that's what you can see. Great, okay. So this is a very common feature. Traffic island there to make life easier for pedestrians, and I'm all for making life easier for pedestrians. But clearly there is not room here for somebody to overtake a cyclist and give them the space that we saw in that first slide. Yeah, the traffic island's there, the driver's just driven over the traffic island. Hence the warning sign, I don't know if you can read that, it says, caution, don't overtake cyclists at the islands. Now, there are literally thousands of these traffic islands, but there's only 2 places in Scotland I know of this warning sign. One is in Inverkeithing, you can see the Forth rail bridge there, and the other is down by Musselburgh Racecourse. So what we train cyclists to do in this situation is not to ride the metre out position, but to move to the centre of the lane. Not the middle of the road, but the centre of the lane to discourage the dangerous overtake. Now, obviously, you don't want to just go, oh, there's a traffic island and drift out. It's a matter of looking as far up the road, seeing the traffic island, look behind. If somebody's about to overtake, let them go. If it's going to help, do a big signal. Check that people have responded to that, and then move to the centre of the lane, through the middle, through past the next one. Then if it's clear, check and move back over. Now that sounds fine and works quite well when there isn't much traffic and it's not going very fast. It gets harder if it's 30-mile-an-hour traffic, harder again 40-mile-an-hour traffic, and good luck trying to move out in 50 or 60-mile-an-hour traffic. So what do? We're signalling the traffic keeps overtaking. We can't get out to the centre of the lane. Do not hug the curb and hope it's going to be all right. Stop, bail out, let all the traffic go by, keep checking it's clear, and when it's clear, carry on. And again, as a group, this isn't a good situation where you want to single up. If you're in your 2x2 formation, you're really making it clear that there is not room to overtake here. So stay in your tight formation, 2x2, and get through all this. And then once you've passed it, the drivers can then make a decision about when it's safe for them to borrow the other side of the road. As a solo cyclist, let's say you've pulled in, you're waiting, you're checking, the traffic keeps going, it's rush hour, you never managed to get out. Is there a plan B? Well, could we ride on the pavement? What does the highway code say about that? Well, the highway code says you must not ride on a pavement, and that's true when the pavement has been classified as a footway, which is the default. But if the local authority reclassify the pavement, like they have between Old Stirling Bridge and Corton Primary, put up a blue circular sign with a bike and people walking, then it becomes a shared use walking and cycling path, and at that point it's perfectly legal to cycle on the pavement, but you've got to look after the pedestrians. Don't whiz past them, don't scare them, and if they don't move out of your way, we just need to slow down and wait. And if the path goes through the woods here, so there isn't a road on either side, in Scotland, thanks to the Land Reform Scotland Act, it's perfectly legal to walk on that path, cycle on it, ride your horse on it, thanks to the Land Reform Scotland Act. But we've got to look after the pedestrians, not scare the horses. If you go on holiday south to England and Wales, they don't have the Land Reform Scotland Act, and there you have to find out whether that path through the woods, it's got grass on either side, there isn't a road next to it, whether that path is a footpath, walking only, or a bridleway, walking, cycling and horse riding. So, top tip, have your holidays in Scotland. We've got the best land access legislation in the world. Moving on. Other signs come across that people get confused about. What signs means affected by their shape and colour. So red and circular, whatever inside, is banned. So this is the no cycling sign. So they use this a lot in England and Wales to show that this is a footpath rather than a bridleway. Consequently, we have a lot fewer of them in Scotland. If signs are triangular, that's a warning. So a bike symbol and a triangle would mean warning, cyclists or cycle routes. Rectangular signs give advice and guidance. So cyclist dismount is not you must get off your bike. It's a warning because of some unspecified hazard. It might be safer to get off your bike. So, for example, the old cobbled Stirling Bridge used to have a cyclist dismount sign on, not because of any danger for pedestrians, but because there was a theoretical risk that a tall, skinny cyclist on a windy day could be blown over the low parapet, because it's lower than modern design guidance, and being an ancient monument, they can't build it up. So in order to protect themselves, Historic Scotland and Stirling Council put up a cyclist dismount sign, so that if you did end up in the river, you couldn't sue them. They could say, well, we did warn you. The downside is there were lots of pedestrians who thought the cyclist dismount sign was that you must get off your bike sign, and you would then get very angry pedestrians, waving their walking stick, trying to put it through people's spokes because you're a naughty cyclist and you must be punished. I think it was a bike club member, possibly Helen, who had a run-in with a very angry pedestrian on the bridge that goes into Cambus Kenneth, and after that, Stirling Council access officer got the cyclist dismount signs removed and replaced with share with care signs, which is a much more positive message. But if you come across one of these, I think there's one still on the old bridge, on the old road between Manor Palace and Alloa. It's perfectly legal to keep riding, but bear in mind you may end up dealing with very angry pedestrians who think you're a law-breaking cyclist and you must be punished. Moving on, going back to this concept of riding in the centre of the lane when there isn't room for safe overtake. That isn't just some cyclist, from Stirling Cycle Training. This is Department for Transport Think Road Safety Campaign. Cyclist ride central when it's narrow to discourage the dangerous overtakes. We've been teaching cyclists this for years. It's even got technical jargon name. We call it the primary position. Don't worry, there won't be a test later. But 2 years ago, it was introduced into the highway code. For the first time, we started telling drivers about it. Now, what makes a road narrow? Well, it could be as simple as there's parked cars on this side of the road, which means the driver can't borrow that side of the road, so ride central to discourage the dangerous overtake. Now we've got a wee video being recorded by a cyclist who's got a camera on their helmet, so wherever they look, we see what they're seeing. Initially, there, I'd suggest at the edge of this damp patch, about a metre out from the curb, like that first slide we saw. That's also keeping them out of the puddles, which is really important. Both as a solo rider and as a ride leader, don't ride through puddles, if at all possible. Not because you want to stay dry, but the water's hiding how deep that puddle is. You don't know if that's a couple of millimetres deep or several inches deep. And there was an awful case down near Salisbury Plain a few years ago. An army officer got a desk job, was riding to and from his barracks and his accommodation to keep his fitness up, went through a puddle one evening, and it wasn't a few millimetres, it was several inches. It put him down on the ground and he was run over by the following traffic. So stay out of puddles. I'm going to run the video. While it's running, I want you to think, when do you first see the traffic island? And afterwards, I'll have a quick talk about what the rider could have done differently and what the driver could have done differently. So the cyclist has looked round, now they're looking down. There's your traffic island. The cyclist looks round again. Now, is that truck actually going much faster than the rider? No, they've probably got a gallon of adrenaline through their system and they can keep up with that truck, no problem at all. So that overtake achieved absolutely nothing. Oh, and now they're turning off. Now, if you watch that video lots, you can tell as the truck comes past, the rider gets on the brakes, slows down and pulls in, using that meter space that we saw in the first slide, the sort of safety area that you can move into to create a bit of space. But even so, the back of that wagon was still horribly close to the rider's elbow. So first to think about what the rider could have done differently, and then the driver. So the rider. Well, I said if you're coming up to a traffic island, you need to get out to the primary position, the centre of that lane. But you saw the speed that truck came back. You need nerves of steel to do that. But what you can do is look as far up the road as you can, see the traffic island, and as soon as you see it, check behind and see what's going on. If there is something coming up fast, signalling is sometimes enough to make the drivers go, whoa, back off. If not, and they're still going for the overtake, you need to have done that look and signal early enough that you can stop before they end up sandwiching between you and the traffic island. So look as far up the road as you can, looking for these hazards. What could the driver have done differently? Well, obviously not done the overtake. And possibly if they'd been looking further up the road, they'd have gone, traffic island, bike, we're all going to arrive together. That's not good, I'll hang back. So actually, if both parties had been looking further up the road, this incident may not have happened. And again, that's one of those basic rules of moving that's in the highway code early on, but people seem to forget about. Look as far up the road as you can, look for the hazards, then you see the hazards early, and then you can plan for how you're going to manage them. Unfortunately, there's lots of people who are looking no further than the thing that's immediately in front of them, which when you're on a bike is your back wheel. They're not looking beyond. So sometimes we need to point these hazards out. I look behind, signal. If they're still going for the overtake, I'm starting to point up the road. Look what's there. And then hopefully they're going to look up and go, whoa, and back off. Again, as a group, the people at the front need to spot these things. The people at the back can't see, so they need to be shouting out, if it's a route you don't know, traffic island coming up. The people at the back, check behind. If you need to point out, if somebody's coming for an overtake and you know start pointing at it, start communicating, letting the group know there's traffic coming through. But it's really important that everybody's on top of their observation and their communication. Another video, and we'll look at decision making around, again, being solo and being in a group. I'm going to stop the share and then do a new share screen. Here we go. So we've got a group. They're not very tight. They are spread out over a long way. Looking at the width of the road, this reminds me of the road from the roundabout where the motorway services are heading down towards Denny. You can imagine the quarries down there. It gives me those sorts of vibes. So they've decided to single up and they're spread out over quite a long way. Now you can see coming up, we've got a traffic island. Everybody's going for the overtake. At this point, somebody needs to be screaming out that this car's coming through. And they're really lucky that when he hit the curb, it didn't flip over. There was a cyclist killed a few years ago down south. In that scenario, the car hit the traffic island and careered into the riders. But you can see how long that group is. Whoever's the ride leader there, ideally you want to have the group shorter front to back. As a guide, if you can get your group to take up the space of an HGV, that's really good. But I would suggest here that choosing to be single up is possibly not doing them any favours. It means the drivers overtaking, like that slide we saw from the highway code, are having to have a long time when there's no oncoming traffic. Keep the group tight. The drivers have still got that side of the road to use. Encourage them to use it. I'm going to go back to sharing my other screen. Bear with me. Yeah, wrong one. Bear with me, I'm really rusty on using Zoom. Share screen. Here we go. So where are we now? Yep, I can read people saying Dunblane. Yep. So the first part of the cycle lane here, there's a hashed area here to remind cyclists to be far enough away that if a car door opens, it cannot hit you. That's been part of the Department for Transport Think Road Safety Campaign guidance, right? Cyclists ride at doors width from parked cars. It's in the highway code. Cyclists ride far enough away that you can't be hit by an opening door. And we teach it in bikeability training in schools. Now, the latest version of the highway code has started to advise the people inside the vehicle not to open the door with the hand closest to the door, but with the hand furthest away, which twists them around so they're looking back towards people on bikes and motorbikes. However, people on bikes and motorbikes are advised not to rely on people doing that, but to just make sure you're far enough away that if a door opens, it cannot hit you. The next photograph is taken about 200 metres further down the road. Here we've got the parked cars and we've got the cycle lane and no hashed area. So if you're riding down that cycle lane and that Zafira door opens, you're doored. Do not ride close enough to parked cars that you can be hit by an opening door, even if a highways officer has painted a cycle lane there. The highway code says that cycle lanes are there to make your journey safer, but use of them depends upon your skills and confidence. And this is absolutely one of those circumstances where you need to have the skills and confidence to know that is the last place you should be riding. In an average year in the UK, 1 or 2 cyclists are killed being hit by car doors and hundreds of others have life-changing injuries. Do not ride close enough that you can be hit. So where do you ride? Well, if you were to ride on the white line there, you're possibly just about far enough away the door can't get you, but now the passing traffic's going to rip your arm off. So remember, if there isn't room for a safe overtake, ride central to discourage the dangerous overtake. So you're now riding central, or you've got your group and they're riding central. You do sometimes see going past parked cars, the person on the outside is nicely away and they've got their buddy on the inside in the door zone. If you're the buddy on the inside in the door zone, oi, move over. Get yourself out of the door zone. So we're riding down here. What's the driver behind doing? Well, if they're on top of their highway code, they're going, oh, well, they're keeping out the door zone. But unfortunately, lots of people don't realise. They just see there's a perfectly good cycle lane there that their road tax is paid for and you're not using it and you must be out just to get up their nose. So if you're unlucky, they're leaning on the horn and screaming and shouting. Well, if they're leaning on the horn and screaming and shouting, that's their problem. They're the ones who are going to have a stroke when they're 30 because their blood pressure's constantly through the roof. But if they're 25 mil from your back wheel, revving the engine, you're thinking, that's endangering me. My top tip would be pull in, stop, ideally between a bonnet and boot, and get rid of them because it's better to have dangerous, impatient people in front of you than behind you. Take a deep breath. Remind yourself you're having a better life than they are. Check it's clear, and when it's clear, carry on. But don't let people bully you into riding in the door danger zone because that's where cyclists die. And if you're riding in a group, trying to get the entire group in there to stop, that's too much of a hazard. Just keep going. Maybe if you want to get rid of the idiot, yeah, take the next left turn, get rid of them, get everybody chilled, and then carry on. But starting to scream and shout back at these people, yes, as a younger man, when angry, I possibly did that, but you've no idea who these people are. They could have just been released from Barlini prison the day before, having served a very long sentence for some unspeakable act of violence. The gangster Kenneth Noy, who was involved in the Brinksmat bullion robbery, and his son was involved in one of those nasty racist murders down in London. They didn't get him for any of that. They got him because he was involved in a road rage incident on a motorway junction where he took out a screwdriver and stabbed somebody. You don't know who these people are. Get rid of them. Now, this photograph was taken at a cycle show. The police had brought in one of these big quarry lorries, and they were explaining to the cyclist that this black area surrounded by yellow, they're calling it the blind spot, and saying keep out of that area. Inviting cyclists to go up. There's a mirror to check here, a mirror here, a mirror up here, a mirror here, a mirror here, a funky lens in there. There's warning lights down there. By the time you've checked all that, it's time to start checking again. It must be a horrible job. I'm glad I don't have to do it. But the bottom line was keep out of this area.
Sorry, Andrew, I'm not seeing any picture of. I'm just seeing everybody's picture.
Okay. Has that been the case for a while?
Just the last minute.
Okay. I will stop.
Setup.
I will stop sharing and start sharing again. Was everybody else able to see the truck okay? Can you see that now, Stuart?
I'm seeing lots of people. I'm seeing all the attendees for some reason.
Right. I'm now getting a message saying participants can see your screen.
Stuart,
Yeah.
there's a couple of bubbles on the top left of the screen, and you see there's a matrix of 9 squares. Do you see that?
No.
That's a switch which allows you to switch between gallery view, which is what you're seeing, versus
right.
the screen.
How have I got? How the hell have I managed that?
IT.
Human competence here.
Nah, I stopped working in IT because this sort of stuff used to drive me mad. Anyway, hopefully you can all see the truck there, the black area, police saying keep out of there. Now, if you think about it, this black area here will map perfectly over a zebra crossing. So as a pedestrian, don't walk up the pavement and straight in front of one of these trucks. There was a girl in Birmingham killed several years ago. Exactly that happened. The truck had stopped because the pedestrian over here, the pedestrian had crossed over, started walking up the pavement, thought it was clear, drove forward. He'd never seen the pedestrian coming up the side who'd started crossing in front. Be very, very careful around these big trucks. The visibility is awful. Now, this is a very common feature. You get them in towns, quite a lot in Stirling. Advanced stop line creates a cycle box at the traffic lights, and there's a handy cycle lane to enable the cyclists to filter up on the inside to get to the advanced stop box, the idea being they get through the junction first, so traffic isn't turning across them, turning left or right across them, going through the junction. Does the size and shape of that facility remind anybody of anything? You can come off mute if you want to shout out.
Yes.
And what does that look like?
It's exactly the same as what you've just shown us on the lorry.
Yeah, so we've got one group of road safety professionals saying, keep out, don't go in there, and another load painting this and saying, come on in, it's lovely. So what do? Well, if you get there first, hopefully the vehicles coming up behind are going to remember that you're there. But if I were to arrive at this junction now, there's a long queue of quite big vehicles. I'm at the back there. Now, how do you get a long queue? When the lights have been red for a while, you get a long queue. And after the lights have been red for a while, the next thing is they go green. So there's no way I want to be filtering up in the blind spot of these big trucks. The lights go green when I'm halfway there. They start moving. If any of these are going to turn left, it's not going to end well for me. So I'm probably going to wait at the back, behind that red truck, between the brake lights, behind the number plates, and ride up in that primary position, centre the lane where everybody can see me. I'm not going to stop at the side here and encourage another truck to come up and put me in their blind spot. And if I were leading a group, again, I just have the whole group wait behind that truck. It's perfectly legal to filter on either side. The highway code says in slow moving and stationary traffic, look out for bikes and motorbikes that may be passing on either side. It calls it filtering. It goes on to say not only is it legal, but drivers should facilitate it and give space for it to happen. However, it is higher risk, and with a group, the risk is some will go inside, some will go outside, the traffic will start moving, some will end up here, some will heat back here, and then you're going to take you a couple of miles to get the group back together. Just a lot less stressful for you as the ride leader, for the riders and for the drivers, if we just keep our group together and ride in a block about the size of an HGV through the junction. So that really is a top tip. Filtering is legal, but we don't have to do it all the time. Now, this is an articulated truck, so the cab moves independently of the trailer, and the cab started moving, so the mirrors are now all pointing at the trailer. And so from the driver's position, the driver cannot see any of these cyclists. Do not go up inside these trucks, especially at junctions. Now, there's two ways the riders could have got there. One is the lorry was there first and they've ridden up inside. Do not do that. These trucks have to move quite a long way over to their right before they turn left. Otherwise, the wheels go over the pavement. So they open up a gap. Don't go into that gap. Don't go in there as a pedestrian. Don't go in there on a bike. Don't go in there in a small car. There's at least 2 videos I know on YouTube of these big trucks pushing Ford Fiesta size small cars sideways down a road, and the driver has no idea they've got a small car on the front. The visibility is that poor. Do not go into that space. That's one way the cyclists could have got there. The other one is that the cyclists were there first and the lorries overtaken them and put them into the blind spot, which is why we say don't stop at the curb, but stop in the centre of the lane. If you're in a group like that, just fill the lane. Encourage the other drivers to wait behind you, and then we go through the junction as effectively one at a time in the way that the junction's been designed to be used. But let's say you're having a really bad day. You're there, the lorry's there. What are you going to do right now? Well, there's no point trying to shout at the driver, they won't hear you. There's no point trying to wave, they can't see you. So bail out, get onto the pavement. And if the local authority put up those railings to keep pedestrians out, I'm probably just going to drop the bike and jump over the railings. I probably haven't got time to manhandle my bike over those railings before the back wheels of that truck are on top of me. And if you are unlucky enough to have a group, just get everybody on the pavement, quick. But best situation is to avoid that situation by A, not going inside, and B, at junction, just fill that space. Be assertive and take ownership of that space. It's yours. Excuse me, I need it. You can have it when I'm finished with it, is the sort of place you want your head to be in. And if a highways officer paints a cycle lane, encouraging you to be in the gutter, don't. Cycle lanes are there to make your journey safer. Use of them depends upon your skills and experience, but your skills and experience tell you as a solo rider you need to be in the centre of the junction in that primary position to encourage people to wait behind you. And as a group, stay paired up, side by side. Don't single up and go in the cycle lane. This is over an hour. Side by side. People should not be overtaking you at junctions, so discourage them from doing so. We now have a group ride. This was in Wales. There's a recumbent rider at the back. Let's have a look at what happens here. Reasonably tight. Yeah, quite a disciplined looking group. Bit of traffic coming by. Riders are looking behind and signalling right, nice and early. There's the sign for the crossroads coming up. Somebody else is signalling right. If you look at the shadow, you can see the recumbent riders signalling right. Okay, what do you do now? You're a rider at the back, and this car's coming through. What do you need as a ride leader to have trained all your riders to do? I suggest at this point, people should be screaming at the top of their voice that there's a car coming through. Shouldn't be doing it. You're signalling right. They should wait, but they've done it. Now, if we watch the riders right at the front, let's see what happens here. Okay, they've started turning. So, and this can happen in a group. Everybody assumes that somebody else is in charge. Somebody else is worrying about stuff. Get people used to the idea that before you change direction, you must check the space you're moving into hasn't got somebody else moving into it. In motorcycle training, they call it a lifesaver look, because one day it might save your life. Okay, and now everybody's in a state of shock, and they're just stopping in the mouth of the junction. Entirely understandable. There's a gallon of adrenaline. At this point, the ride leader needs to get control of the group, pull them into a gateway. Come on, folks, let's move over. We'll stop over there. But we don't want to just be filling a junction with shell-shocked riders. That's where a ride leader needs to actually lead and get control. So nice signals early, but do check that it is clear to change direction. The driver got, I can't remember if he got a driving ban for that one or not, but there was a conviction involved. Okay, so the highway code, there were changes a couple of years ago, and changes around T-junctions. The communication from the Department of Transport has been poor. So what has changed? Well, if you're riding or driving down Cornton Road and you're going to turn right in towards the primary school, you have always had to give way to traffic coming towards you. You've always had to give way to pedestrians who are in the road. Since the changes, you also should give way to pedestrians waiting to cross the road, and if there's a cycle lane, you should give way to cyclists who are going straight on. Now, that's not to say that the pedestrians and cyclists just put blinkers on and go straight out. The highway code still has the green cross code. So pedestrians, and in this case cyclists, would be advised to check that drivers are giving them priority, but they do have priority. Likewise, if you're driving or riding along here and you're turning in, you've always had to give way to pedestrians in the road. Now you're supposed to give way to pedestrians waiting and cyclists going straight on. But cyclists and pedestrians, I would check carefully that people turning in are giving you priority. And if you're coming out of the side road, turning left or right, you've always had to give way to pedestrians in the road. Traffic coming this way, traffic going that way. Now you also need to give way to pedestrians waiting to cross and cyclists waiting to go straight on. I have it on good authority from Stirling Council that these give-way lines, which technically are no longer compliant with the highway code, are supposed to be being burnt off. Another thing that's new in the highway code is this concept of parallel crossings, although this one's been in Bridge of Allen since 2016. So if you're riding or driving on the main road and there is a pedestrian on the zebra or a cyclist on the parallel crossing, you must stop. If there's a pedestrian waiting to cross or a cyclist waiting to cross, you should stop. And it's as simple as that. However, again, pedestrians and cyclists crossing or waiting to cross, although you have priority, I would check and make sure that drivers, and for that matter other riders, are giving you priority. People on bikes are not the only vulnerable road users. We talked at the start about how much space people need. Well, hopefully you can see the lady here taking her dog for a walk. She's come up Tinkers Lane and she's heading down towards Canvas Barron. No footway, so she's walking in the road. If we were driving down here and we need to go past her, how much space do we need to give her? Anybody remember? I can lip read people saying 2 meters. Correct. That's going to put us on the other side of the road. Is this a good place to be on the other side of the road? Clearly not. So coming down here, we just need to wait. I would well argue that as a rider, you need to give her 2 meters. And certainly if you're a fast-moving peloton of 15 riders doing 25 miles an hour, you really do need to give her 2 meters. There's a new hierarchy of road users in the highway code, and at the top of that hierarchy, the most vulnerable is pedestrians. Everybody has to look after them. Next, you've got cyclists and horse riders, then you've got motorbikes, mopeds, then you've got cars, then vans, and then trucks and buses. But everybody has to look after pedestrians. A quick refresher on the Land Reform Scotland Act. It says private road. Are we allowed to ride our bikes along this road, even though it's a private road? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no, thumbs sideways for I'm not sure. Okay, those who've got your thumbs up, we are. It may well be a private road, but the Land Reform Scotland Act gives us the right to non-motorised access to private roads and paths, providing it's not somebody's front garden. So it's perfectly legal to walk, cycle or ride your horse along here, but you've got to look after the people who are walking and not scare the horses. Things may be different in England and Wales. And the final thing to flag up, this is an old news report from 2006. There was an awful case involving Rill Cycling Club in North Wales. They were out one winter's day, I think it was coming up to Christmas. It was an icy day, and a car with 4 bald tyres hit some ice, skidded across the road and killed 4 of the club members. The driver was prosecuted for having 4 bald tyres and was fined £180 and given 6 penalty points. What isn't well known was, though, that the police also interviewed, under caution, the officials of the club about whether they had been negligent to go out on their bikes on an icy day. They weren't charged in the end. They didn't go to court, but it was a nasty time for them as club officials. And it turned out that they obviously had solicitors, but they weren't particularly experts in cycling and cycling-related matters. Sterling Bike Club is affiliated to both Scottish Cycling and Cycling UK. They have legal teams, they have experts. If anybody's ever unlucky enough to find themselves in this sort of situation, do make use of your affiliation with these people and get them on the case early. They can then advise your own legal team. I was talking to one of the senior people at Cycling UK, and they were brought in on this quite late on, and they could have helped the cycling club's legal team with expert knowledge. So hopefully that'll never come, but do remember part of the advantage of affiliating to people like Scottish Cycling and Cycling UK is that they have professionals who are there to help. Hopefully you never need to use them, but don't hesitate if you do need to. So, what questions do you have? And I will turn off the screen and see if I can see you all. Just checking. No, I can't see the chat. Is the chat? Where's the chat gone? Or is that a Zoom? Is that a Teams thing? Anyway, if anybody's got any questions, turn off mute and ask away. Jim, I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you. You're on mute, Jim. Ah, there's the chat. Right,
I'm talking to myself as usual. It's just one of these things nowadays. But that's been terrific, Andrew. Let me say that for a start.
Thank you very much.
I suppose my question is, and I'm thinking about the Stirling area.
Yeah.
How often or does Stirling Council ever consult with people like yourself or other specialist organisations when they are designing cycle paths? Now, the reason I'm asking this is that I feel there are a number of really critical areas in the Stirling area which are absolute hazards as far as a kind of conflict between cyclists on a cycle path and vehicles, not least of all the one at the entrance to the King's Knot, which has a green cycle lane, and a lot of drivers just simply ignore it. The other one that comes to my mind is down what I think they call Millennium Way, between the fire station and the River House,
yes,
where some years ago they introduced a two-way road. I seldom use it if I'm heading down to the River House, but you get such aggravation. Yeah. And I'm wondering if Stirling Council ever take into account the amount of aggravation that their design is actually causing, and maybe not as much safety as it should be.
That's a really good point. I mean, they do consult. Sometimes they listen and take stuff on board, and sometimes they don't. Talking about the two examples you've got there, so the one protection on Millennium Way, that's phase one, if you like, of a longer route that they're planning that it goes down past the King's Knot. Then there'll be a toucan crossing going in to cross over to get towards the fire station. Then there'll be a route that goes down past the fire station. Then there's the route that goes down Millennium Way. The narrow bit should be widened. At the end of the Millennium Way bit, there should be a route that then goes through the business park. It should then have a toucan crossing, and the barrier should be taken out, and you end up down by the Highland Gates. And then there should be a route that goes along past the Weybridge and under the motorway, and then towards Dobbies, and then a toucan crossing will go in, and it'll cross you over, and it'll get you to the Old Bridge and onto Chalmerston Road. Now, obviously, as you say, for a lot of us, if we're on our road bikes, that's an awful lot of faff and a lot of crossing over stuff. And when it's finished, in theory, that might be quite good. I've got some clients who are teenagers, and there's no way I take them on the road down there, but I can take them on that protected way. I can work through the business park, and that's what they're looking at. They're not looking at how can we make life easier for fit, fast roadies from Stirling Bike Club and the Tri Club. They're looking at the 20% of people who said, I want to ride my bike, but I'm scared shitless of the roads. I'll ride my bike like loads of people did during lockdown when there was no motor vehicles, but I'm not doing it sharing space with motor vehicles. So the current design guidance is if you want mass cycling, like they have in the Netherlands, in Copenhagen, you need to have separate space. The problem is you end up with a bit gets done because there's some money available. So they do, oh, right, we'll take that money, we'll do that now. So there was funding during the pandemic for space for people. So they grab that funding and put the ones in. But they haven't got the rest of the stuff that then links it up. So at the moment, you'd come down, if you did use that, you'd get to the roundabout by the river house, and then you're going back onto the road anyway. But now you've got to go around 3 arms of a roundabout. And actually, that's the dangerous stuff, is roundabouts. I'm in discussion at the moment with Stirling Council about the cycle path they put up Causeway Head Road, and it was Stirling Council and Susterans wanted to go all the way up Causeway Head Road. The Community Council in Causeway Head weren't happy with that, and they wanted it to go through the back roads. So we made the point, look, you're still going to get loads of people on bikes carrying on up Causeway Head Road because they want to go to the Co-op, they want to go to Baines the Bakers, they want to go to a bed and breakfast that's on there, they want to go to Recycle Bike, they want to go to Corrieri's Cafe. You've got to have some way for people to get off that cycle path onto the road, or if they come down from Corrieri's to get off that onto the cycle path. And it seems to have fallen through the gap in the floorboards. I was talking to somebody from Stirling Council today saying, look, where's the drop curb to enable that to happen? Where's the phase in the lights for it to happen? They're going, well, the highways designers were looking at this, and they're looking at it with Susterans, and on the hierarchy of road users, pedestrians are the most important, and we thought having people come off the road onto that shared use pavement at that point was going to be high risk for the pedestrians, so the cyclists are going to have to stay on the road. I'm saying, but if cyclists are now riding down Causeway Head Road, in the road because they couldn't get onto the cycle path, the drivers are going to lose, some drivers are going to lose their tiny little minds because you're not using the effing cycle path that their effing road tax is paid for. And here's examples of cyclists who've been assaulted by angry drivers, and yeah, it's difficult, but you could take the next right turn and then go on. So their priority is getting people who don't ride bikes onto bikes to get mass cycling. And yes, unfortunately, it seems to be that at times, those of us who are already riding on the roads, for a while this stuff goes in, we might end up with a less ideal situation.
Yeah.
And I totally take your point on Millennium Way. If I'm on my lightweight machine and I'm heading up and down there, and I'll go down past the fire station now and down past the college and come in that way and I try to avoid being on that road. I try to avoid being on roads where there's a cycle path and I'm not using it, because I've got a stage in my life I just can't deal with the shit from the drivers when you do that.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, you need a certain amount of emotional energy, and I just don't seem to have it anymore. It's just
That's very true, Andrew. Thank you.
So they do talk to cyclists, but their priority is getting people who aren't cycling onto bikes, which does mean sometimes that we have to take a hit. I think that's the short answer.
Thanks.
Good question. Any other questions? Anybody sitting there thinking, what was he talking about? Or how about here? Or what about that? Or did that all make sense? Hope you're impressed, Stirling Bike Club.
Hi, Andrew. It all makes sense, but I think sometimes, as a ride leader, it's very difficult if, you can be, with the size of the groups that we can sometimes take out, and I hold my hand up, it's a long time since I've taken a big road group out. But, you're at the front and you've got somebody at the back who's not seen this presentation, doesn't understand what you're trying to achieve by keeping people together in a group central. And suddenly they start shouting, single up, and half the group single up, and you're the one who's supposed to be in control going, hang on a minute. Yeah. No, you know what I mean? It sometimes
absolutely, yeah. And And I've had that situation years and years ago when the reliability ride still went Loch Head. I ended up with a group of, I don't know, about a dozen survivors who'd been spat out the back, and we were tired and knackered. And coming through that bit towards Kilmahog, where again there's all the double S bends, and there was constant oncoming traffic. There's no way it was safe for anybody to overtake us. And there was somebody saying, "Oh, single up," and I was just, you have to be very assertive and go, "No, there's no room for a safe overtake. Stay paired." And I think I pulled us in by the Edinburgh Wool Mill place or whatever it's called. And it's just a matter of being assertive and going, "No, it's not safe for them to overtake. Stay paired up, keep tight." And there's times when you need to get your group to go as fast as they've got legs for. So coming out of Dollar, heading down towards Tillicoultry, encourage the group to go to the max. And again, coming through there, we had tired legs, but I just said, "Look, let's push it, guys. I want to get off this bit of road. Let's push it, keep it tight." But and people go, "Single, no." And you've just got to be assertive. I mean, that's what the L on Cycle Ride Leader is. It's leadership.
Yeah.
And again, there's days when you've got the emotional energy for it, and there's days when perhaps you need to go, "You know what? Can somebody else lead this? Because my head's just not in the right place for it." Really good question. Thank you. Does that help?
It wasn't really a question, but it was really, just really to highlight, to get that point across, also obviously to everybody else, because, even just coming up through Dunblane, I live in Dunblane, we've got those silly, ridiculous cycle lanes everywhere. But again, you've said, you pointed them out, you're in the car door zone, and it isn't really safe to use them. But the amount of people you cycle up there with, and the cyclists themselves that expect you to be in the cycle lane, and single up and use it, etc. Whereas if, as you say, bigger groups, you just really need to stick together in the middle of the road. My husband is very good at giving me the old, telling me what to do from behind. Who hasn't seen any of these videos? But
I mean, I've come downhill there, and I'm doing 22 miles an hour. It's a 20-mile speed limit, and I'm out of the door zone, and there's somebody in a transit van behind, leaning on their horn, screaming. Just take a deep breath, and that's their problem. But yeah, the good news is, again, I was talking to somebody from Stirling Council, and I've been pushing this for 2 years since they repainted it. It's due to be burnt off on the 1st of April. Again, it's been so frustrating because I pointed out years ago that cycle lane wasn't compliant with the highway code, and they just let it fade, and it just about disappeared. And then, unfortunately, somebody new moved into Dunblane who'd taken up cycling and was most upset that the cycle lane was really faint, and complained to her councillor, and the councillor complained to that, and they repainted the bloody thing. And I couldn't believe they did it. They just pulled out the old plans and didn't check. Anyway, it should be burnt off in about a month.
Is that the one that goes straight into a curb?
It's the that's the other bit. I've been telling them, look, that last bit going downhill is so short. By the time you get into it, you've got to be planning to get out of it. Just hash the whole thing off. So, but I said the biggest issue is that section that was shown where you've painted the cycle lane right next to the door zone. I said, just burn it off. Don't worry about, there isn't a solution there that works with paint. They need to take that bit in the middle where the grass is that's no use to anybody. That's a historical throwback to when that was the main A9 between Stirling and Perth, and reallocate that space to do something useful with. But I said, look, the important thing is just stop directing cyclists to ride in the door danger zone where they get killed. So hopefully come the 1st of April, they'll burn it off and stop doing that. Stand by.
This is 1st of April, Andrew.
That's what they told me. I did say, "Are you having a laugh? Is this a wind up?" But she said no. She's got the team booked in to come and burn it off. So we'll see. It's been booked several times, but then one of the utilities companies come along and say, "Oh, we want to dig up the road to do waterworks or gas works or something," and they, for some reason, statutorily have priority. So Stirling Council then has to step back. So they've been booked a few times, and then utility companies have got in the way. But this is hot off the press. This was a meeting I had this morning. That Dunblane cycle lane should be gone in April. Touch wood. Any other questions, observations?
Andrew, it's Andy Massey here.
Hi, Andy.
I should be the top corner, I think. Firstly, thanks for taking this presentation for everyone. It's been hugely appreciated, certainly by me. My query or question is along the lines of, again, it's the cycle lanes round Stirling.
Yep.
When they first sort of opened them up, certainly the ones that go around by King's Knot, the ones that Jim was talking about.
Yeah.
When I was out with the club, I felt this obligation to use them. Just from the point of view that we're a cycle club, we need to be seen to do the right thing. After using them once, it was extremely apparent that if you've got 12, 16 riders, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's not the way Joe Bloggs or White Van Man sees it. And we are, you know, I keep saying we're all ambassadors for the club, and it's not good to be seen not to be doing the correct thing. However, do I take it from what you're saying that really, as a big group, we just need to be assertive and use the road space as, you know, as other road users, and not be driven into the cycle lanes because we feel obliged to do that?
Yes, that's a fair representation of the law, and again, it may vary depending upon your group. If you've got a tempo group that can ride at 20 miles an hour and the speed limit's 20 miles an hour, then riding in the road entirely appropriate, and riding in a space shared with pedestrians not particularly appropriate. If you've got a development group of people who haven't ridden much, aren't used to riding in a group, aren't used to riding at any great speed, then pottering along on the cycle paths may be more appropriate. I think it's not there's a hard and fast rule, this is the case in all circumstances. It's looking at your group at the time. Sometimes
that's definitely something that the ride organisers should possibly consider when they put the ride up and start leading.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to, if for whatever reason I'm thinking, right, I'm trying to think of an example, but if I were not going to be using a cycle lane, I might also think, is there another way I can go that I wouldn't?
That's exactly what I would do, Andrew. Yeah. I'll be perfectly honest. I've always thought, if I'm going to be leading something that leads down that way, is there an alternative way of getting through town or
absolutely,
or whatever, just to avoid it? And then you're totally negating that whole argument with drivers and people not being comfortable being in the road when there is a big cycle lane there as well.
Yeah, and it also depends. I mean, before they put that new cycle, that wider cycle path down by the King's Knot, it used to just be a shared use path. And coming from King's Park, heading down towards the River House, I'd just be on the road. I could keep up with the traffic. I'm fresh, it's downhill. But some days, coming back after I've done 80 miles into a headwind and my legs are knackered, and I'm in the granny gear and I'm barely turning the pedals, I'd be on that shared use path going back up the hill because I was knackered. I was going barely faster than anybody walking, and it was less stressful than being in the road. So again, there's no this is the rule all the time. It's what's the circumstances just now, and that's probably my main takeaway. Is this is a dynamic role as a ride leader. You've got to look at the circumstances at the time and what's best for your group.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because after that experience of feeling that I should encourage everyone to use the cycle lane, I just thought, never again. It was just ridiculous. Yeah. So, thanks for your opinion there.
Okay. I'm just checking the chat. Oh, hi, Jill. Yes, the car overtaking the group, who's the group turning right. Yeah, that just makes me cold looking at that. So yeah, there's basic rules of moving. Check the space you're going to move into is clear. Check before you change direction. Make sure you can stop in the distance you can see clear. All these basic rules of communication. And as ride leaders, also be aware that a lot of the time people, when they're in a group, will just go into sheep mode and just follow the person in front. So encourage them to do their own checks. Really good point. Stuart, yeah, just take time to do. Yeah, that's good. If things go wrong, it's a really good point. Always worth stopping and reviewing and thinking what happened there. And again, with that group where they were turning right and the car overtook, absolutely get the group into a gate. Just give everybody a chance just to decompress, talk through what happened, what can we do differently next time, and carry on. Single track road, yeah. So let's think something like back road from Doon to Callender, Deanston Road. If you're in pairs, nobody can get by. If you're singled up, and you're a group of 16, you're probably, the road's not straight enough that anybody can see whether it's safe to overtake. So I've not led a group along Deanston Road for a long time, but I'm probably there more interested in back getting the group into a gateway or a turning or something like that to allow traffic to go by, rather than singling up and having drivers basically scraping past our elbows. If we're on a single track road with passing places, again, use the passing places to allow people to overtake, and also be assertive. So if there's vehicles coming towards you, there's something to be said for staying paired up to encourage them to pull into the passing places so that you can then go by. And in terms of recap on singling up,
wasn't sure. After all this, I got.
Yeah.
Should I be? When exactly should I be shouting to single up now? I'm not sure. I'm not sure we should.
That's a really good point. I mean, I have a whole load of other slides that I use with less experienced ride leaders. And it's just a whole load of situations. Like, okay, what do you do here? Single up or paired? And you know what? The vast majority of them, you're paired up. I will quickly find one or two. Okay, let's share this one. What can you see at the moment? Can you see some cars parked on either side of the road?
No.
No.
Gallery view.
And share screen. Okay.
You can see it.
You can see that. So, if you were leading a group through there, do you want to be in pairs or singled up? Now, the things I think about is if I'm riding towards the camera, I don't want anybody in the door zone. That's my first point of principle. So we've got to be quite a long way over, and then we've got this truck over here. If I'm going that way towards the back of that truck, again, if we're in pairs and I move the group far enough over that if that moves out or opens a door, then there's somebody's in a door zone on the other side. So here, I may well want to single up and thread down the middle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that one, actually.
Here's some other ones. Okay.
Dunblane again.
Dunblane. Yeah, you can tell I've run a few soccer ride league courses in Dunblane. So, is there room for somebody to safely overtake you going through that gap?
No.
So, where do you position yourself?
In the middle.
In the middle.
Is there any advantage of being single as opposed to pairs?
No.
No.
So this is the sort of decision-making process. Oh, this is an interesting one. Doon. Single or pairs?
I'm confused by the view because I'm on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah, you're looking.
Yeah.
Fair enough, but it's basically got a meter cycle lane, no centre line there.
Oh, I would stay
single-
in. No, I would stay in pairs.
Yeah, my theory there would be if one behind the other, 16 long,
Mm.
I still want them moving over to overtake me. That's just paint. It's not protection. I don't want them driving past my elbow. So I want them really moving over to overtake. So if we're in pairs and there's no oncoming traffic and they think they can move over, then they're going to be past us quicker, and B, they're going to be potentially giving us more space.
But realistically, they're not going to overtake you because they'll be overtaking you on speed bumps and stuff.
Yeah,
So unless they've got a big 4x4 that can ride the speed bumps.
Well, yeah, or a bus or something. Yeah, but that's the sort of decisions I'm making. Okay, also Dune, single or paired up going through here. Well, let's think of the priorities. One, you want to be out of the door zone.
Yeah.
If you're in pairs and the inner rider's outside the door zone, whoops, you've just gone head to head. So what do you think? Single or pairs?
Single.
Single. So there we go. There are times when being single is useful, and it's usually because you're wanting to keep out of the door zone somehow. Single or pairs?
That looks like single.
Yeah.
Because?
Again, it's narrow and you've got door on one side. So
Yeah, door zone.
yeah, the doors is a real thing that I've picked up on this actually.
Yeah.
And doors on the outside. I hadn't really twigged doors on the outside. Always doors on the inside I'd be positioning about, but the one on the other side of the road I wouldn't be thinking about.
Okay. Again, Dune, A84. You're riding away from the camera, going around the corner. Single or pairs?
Pairs.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm missing something.
Yeah, you guys have got this. Excellent. There we go.
My comment about the single track road was that I did an away day and I was appalled as we were approaching oncoming cars. The people at the front of the group decided to dive into the lay-by on the other side of the road to let the vehicle pass rather than behaving like they were in a car and force the oncoming vehicle to use the lay-by. I just didn't dawn on me that anyone would actually think like that. So it's part of my away day brief now when I say to people is, no, you're a car. And
yeah, that's quite a good way of doing it. Yeah. So other questions? What's the rule with cycle-friendly roads? It's just a piece of branding to be able to introduce a lower speed limit. Cyclists don't have priority. It's just a way of reminding drivers there might be something other than cars on this road. So they're usually cycling, walking, and horse riding friendly roads. So they've done the back road going out of Canvas Barron's been done. I can't think what it's
$1.
Yeah, dollar. I hear the Auchinleigh road's going to be done, but no, they don't give cyclists any extra priority. It's just a way of getting a lower speed limit on. So having a driver drive right, forced me to stop on the Lochern Road. Yeah, Lochern Road, I'm trying to remember, I'm being followed, it's single track, isn't it? So again, they should be using, if they get to the passing place first, they should stop and use it. If they keep going, they're an arse.
Yeah, it was a single track road. It was a really busy day in the summer, and hello, and there weren't any passing places.
Yeah.
And I just carried on thinking I'm a really small thing, so if the driver slows down or stops, I can just get by. But he just drove straight at me.
Yeah. Next one. How do we manage conflict with pedestrians? Some aggression from walking on a shared use path a few weeks ago. Slowed down and called "excuse me" and a very aggressive response. Yeah, there's a lot of people who don't realise that shared use paths are shared use paths. They think they're on the pavement. You're on their pavement, so you must be a naughty cyclist. So you do get, if you're using shared use paths, you do sometimes get pedestrians who just have not spotted that blue circular sign. But the hierarchy of road users, they are the most vulnerable. If we are going past pedestrians on shared use paths, we should slow down, give them space, let them know we're coming. If we're coming up behind pedestrians, let them know you're coming. If you ring a bell, some get really crabby because you think you're telling them to get out of the way. If you don't ring a bell and shout a friendly "good morning, hello," some people get really angry because you didn't ring a bell. That's just life. So if they don't get out of the way and there isn't room to go by, then we just need to wait, which is why fit, fast cyclists will often prefer to be on the road rather than on a busy shared use path. But if you've got a 7-year-old with you, you'd probably be much happier on the shared use path, but we've got to look after the pedestrians. So perfectly legal to ride on shared use paths, but we do have to look after them, and again accept that there will be some pedestrians who just don't like the fact that we're there at all. Excellent. These have all been really good questions. Do we have any others? We're past the 8 o'clock, but I've had my tea, so I'm happy to keep asking you questions while you keep asking them. Any else? And you're right. You can do all the right things, and you'll still get some pedestrians who are just really angry. If they spent their entire life reading the Daily Mail, being drip fed that we're all the devil's spawn and that we should be taken away and ritually sacrificed on the altar of a motor vehicle, then they probably are going to be angry. And some people are just angry. Oh, dogs on long leads. Yeah, look out for them. Highway code says they should keep them on a short lead, but look out for the ones on long leads. Good. Any other questions? As I say, if you think of any, as soon as I stop the call and you go, I wish I'd said so and so, you can probably track me down on Twitter. I'm at Sterling Bike Training, on Sterling Cycle Training, or you can even track me down on Strava and send me a direct message. But I think the questions seem to have dried up. So thank you all very much for coming along, and good luck with your ride leading.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Yeah, thank you for generously sharing your time with us.
No, you're welcome. Last quick question: do we offer awareness training for HGV drivers? Yes. If the HGV drivers work for a local authority or public authority, they can get it free. And basically, Recycle Bike manage that on behalf of Cycling Scotland and through a couple of other driver training agencies. And I quite often do training with them and for them. So yeah, if anybody's a fleet manager and has got HGV drivers who need this, absolutely we can do it. I also deliver this training for CPD, for driving instructors. I'm about to do some for Institute of Advanced Motorist Assessors. And if anybody works in high schools, Helen, I can come in and deliver this to S5 and S6 groups. There's some funding again, Helen. So
brilliant.
If you want me back in, shout quickly, because we need to get it spent before the end of March. So I can put you in touch with the development officer who manages it, whose name has temporarily escaped me. But shout if
So S5 and 6.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
brilliant. I will speak
to S5s and
yeah.
6s, but if you've got an assembly hall and you want to throw S4s, 3s, 2s, 1s, or your bike club in there as well, absolutely fine. If I'm there delivering, I don't. The more the merrier.
Brilliant. Thank you. I will speak to someone at school.
If it's a private company, if people are interested in HGV professional driver training, either talk to Cycling Scotland. If you talk to Cycling Scotland, they'll just fire you off to Recycle Bike. But Phil Jones is the guy at Recycle Bike who is their main man for truck driver training. He's brilliant. Okay. Right. Well, let's all go and get on our turbo trainers then.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Cheers, Andrew. Brilliant
Thank
session.
you.
Thank you.
Bye. Oh, I better turn off recording. How do I do that?